Further debate? The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and speak to this bill. I want to thank the member from Trinity Spadina for bringing it forward. I want to make it very, very clear that not only will I be voting in support of this bill, but it is also strongly supported by the PC caucus. Speaker, it's the kind of speeches that we've heard today from the member from Willowdale that give people reason for being cynical about politics and about government as a whole. Speaker, what we have here is a bill that is simply saying that we want to expand the mandate of the Ombudsman to look into matters of concern in areas that touch the lives of so many people in this province that are now closed to the Ombudsman. I don't like the fact that we have to be debating this bill at all, because, Speaker, in fact, the real Ombudsman should be the members of Cabinet, the Cabinet ministers who are elected by people in this province to oversee government. But instead of being Ombudsman for the people who elected them, they become defenders of a bureaucracy gone wrong. The real Ombudsman should be the members of this legislature. But the fact of the matter is that the members of this legislature are cut off at the knees when they attempt to look into many of the issues that are going wrong, whether it be long-term care facilities, whether it be a school board, or whether it be a hospital, or whether it be the Children's Aid. And so we, as members of the legislature, are now forced to say we need an officer of the legislature to do the job that we are actually elected to do because of the barriers that have been built up over time that actually keep us from doing the job and getting to the answers that we need. I want to speak specifically to two areas. One, Speaker, are the school boards. You know, Speaker, we have trustees elected to actually represent the people in this province and students on matters of education. But the reality is that most trustees have been neutered in terms of their ability to actually do the job because the directors of education in this province, to a large degree, the administration is dictating to trustees what the policies will be. There are very few trustees who actually can exercise and have the authority to do so because over time their authority has been eroded. And so what we need is someone to be able to go and do the job of the trustees because they're refusing to do it. I want to give you an example. With us in the House today, and I welcome her, is Lisa McDougall. She has had a serious challenge with the school board because of their inability or unwillingness to address a very serious issue that has to do with busing. She took her issue to the trustees and expected that the trustees would actually represent the parents and represent this issue. Here, unfortunately, is her experience. Her experience as related when she went to see the school boards. School boards lack accountability, and the issue of student transportation procurement clearly demonstrates the disconnect between what the ministry says ought to happen and what in reality happens at the local school board. Here is what she said when she sat down with her school board. I sat in negotiations meeting with a superintendent of business who, when asked what the trustees thought about the whole RFP process as rolled out by the ministry, responded, quote, "It doesn't matter," and then asked the Catholic Board Superintendent of Business, do they know? And again, well, it wouldn't matter, we're going ahead with this anyway. This is just one example. Speaker, I had that example in York Region, where parents were attempting to meet with trustees and they were told by the Director of Education they should not and cannot meet with parents in private to discuss matters of education. It wasn't until I raised it in this House that this was actually then brought to the attention of that school board, and very quickly things changed. But I can tell you this, that whether it's bullying or whether it is other issues, very few school board trustees are empowered to do what they were elected to do, and so we need an ombudsman. Another example is Children's Aid Society. Speaker, in 1998, this House passed a piece of legislation called the Social Work and Social Services Work Act. The whole purpose of that legislation was to ensure that there are standards across this province for social workers and social service workers. It was to establish a college that would register social service workers and social workers so that there would be a disciplinary panel, that people could be held to a standard of accountability. What has happened over time? This same government has actually found a way to circumvent that legislation that was intended to protect the public interest. Why? Because now Children's Aid Societies are calling those social workers child protection workers. You know what that does? It ensures that every social worker working for a Children's Aid Society is now not required to register as a social worker, and therefore is not subject to those standards, and therefore is not subject to the disciplinary process. And it is the government that has actually facilitated that circumvention. And so we have things going on in Children's Aid Societies over which we have no control. It's going to take nothing short of an ombudsman going into those agencies and ensuring that the appropriate research is done and that these things are exposed. I know what's happening, Speaker, because you see, I was a cabinet minister too. And I know the discussions that took place, and I'm sure it took place in the NDP when they were the government. This government, our government, here's what happens. What happens is we don't want the ombudsman to have access to all of these things because it may well embarrass us. It's actually cumbersome. We don't want those additional eyes, and we don't want that sun to shine in. And I say, Speaker, that we need that disclosure and that transparency. And our government, unfortunately, governments of all stripes have come to the point where rather than being willing to look at what the problem is and dealing with it, we circle the wagons. And we ensure that we protect our bureaucracy, we ensure that we protect those agencies, and rather than saying, let's get it right, let's listen to the people who are affected by the social service, the public service, the educational services, our hospital, let's listen and hear what is wrong with that administration and fix it. What we do is we circle the wagons and we defend, and in the meantime, innocent people continue to be hurt. People who cannot speak for themselves are left unprotected, and the whole purpose of this act, and the reason that we're supporting it, is because we believe it's gone on far too long. People need to know that someone can move into these agencies, into these organizations, be it long-term care, be it a hospital, be it a school board, and ensure that the public interest is protected. Again, I thank the member from Trinity Spadina for bringing this forward. It will be interesting to see what the position of government members will be in this matter. Thank you.